Imagine for a moment that your name is Melvern Knoll. Be a strange name for you to have, but you would be the owner of a mini golf course here in Highland, Illinois. And it was located right across the street here. That was a place called Funland. And its owner, Melvern Knoll, was here in the middle of the night, actually about 4 o'clock in the morning. Still very dark. Here at his little mini golf course to check on the pipes, make sure the pipes haven't frozen, because it was so cold that night, January 5 of the year 2000. So Melvern gets here, gets out of his truck, and he sees off in the distance really bright light. Doesn't think much about it. And when he comes back out of his little office here, he is stunned to find, basically right over the top of this very location, a huge flying object which he cannot identify. The way that Melvern described it was that it was about the size of a football field. It was like a flying house is how he described it, like a huge flying brick, you might say, where it had a lot of height to it as well, and rectangular in shape, lights, windows, pretty close to the ground. And it was moving slowly. There was no noise. And Melvern said that it flew off over the grain elevator here in the center of Highland. So basically flew right over town. And he was the first person to witness what became known as the St. Clair Triangle UFO, sometimes called the UFO over Illinois. And they call it the St. Clair Triangle because it happened here in St. Clair County, Illinois, which is right across the river from St. Louis. And that's the story of how this UFO first got spotted. Melvern, of course, decided, I gotta tell somebody. He drove over to the police department in Highland and told the police, hey, you guys might wanna, just be looking around for this giant flying building that I just saw. And subsequently, there would be several police officers who would also witness this object throughout the course of about an hour between 4 and 5 a.m. on that night of January 5th, 2000. So let's go find some of the other sites where witnesses saw this very large object. So word is now out on the police radios throughout St. Clair County to be on the lookout for this object reported by Melvern Knoll. Busy road. An officer from Lebanon, Illinois, heard all this on the radio, and he also saw a very bright light off in the distance and decided that he was going to try to get closer and closer to that light. And so he followed it east from Lebanon toward a very little place called Summerfield, Illinois. And when he got to this point in the road, he was coming this way. When he got to this point, he felt like he was close enough to this object where he had to get out, get a look for himself outside the car. So he turned off the lights that he had flashing on top of the car, and he turned off the car as well. Got out. Right over there, where the road just starts to curve a little bit, right before the curve in the road, there's a point where some newer pavement meets older pavement, and there used to be at that point a big sign that said something like "Test pavement ends here." You can still see it on Google Earth. If you go along this road on Google Earth, which is labeled as 50, towards Summerfield, you can still see that sign. Unfortunately, it has since been taken down, but that's the spot right about where you see those those two telephone poles right there. He gets out of his car, this object flies directly over him, and he describes it as being shaped like a triangle rather than like a rectangle. It's a triangle in his observation. He also says it's huge, about the size of a football field, right? Has lights on it. It's about 1,000 feet off the ground, so not very high. And it, again, no noise and moving very slowly, at least until he reaches into his car to grab his radio to try to tell everybody what he's seeing. And during that moment when he was reaching in, the object flew a very great distance, because when he got to look up again, it was way, way, way far away. So it apparently went from moving very, very slowly to being very fast acceleration. So that's where Officer Barton witnessed all of this, with that UFO coming in this direction towards us. The next location where this UFO was spotted was in the town of Shiloh, Illinois, once again by a police officer in the middle of this night. And Shiloh is about, well, it's very close to Scott Air Force Base, and the UFO came within about a mile of that Air Force Base. I wasn't able to find out exactly where in Shiloh the officers saw that, so I can't take you to that location, but I can take you here. This is a little park. It's in the town of Millstadt, Illinois. It's the last spot where we have a really good sighting that night of this huge UFO. And that was spotted here in this very park, sometimes called Liederkranz Park, sometimes called Village Park. And Officer Stevens had heard about this UFO on his radio and decided that he would come to this park, face his cruiser, in this case in a north direction, and see what he could see. And this UFO surprised him because he's facing north, and the UFO came over the town of Millstadt from the south. And so he saw it all of a sudden, right? And what he said over the radio is, "It's huge." So that was very consistent with the other descriptions, the other eyewitness accounts. He also said it was triangular. He said it was moving slowly, had lights on it, about 1,000 feet off the ground, and came directly over him. And he decided he was going to grab his Polaroid camera and try to get a picture of it. You can imagine how that goes in the middle of a night, pointing his camera up into a black sky, but all we can get from that picture is a lot of black and just a couple of lights that we can't really make much from. So the Polaroid, probably the best evidence we have aside from the actual eyewitness accounts themselves, but it doesn't tell us a whole lot about anything. And it was quite cold, so unfortunately those pictures don't develop very well in the cold either. So that might have been a part of that picture not turning out to be much other than some lights in a dark background. In any case, I'll show you now the direction that Officer Stevens was looking. I'm going to turn you into the wind here, and he said it was moving slowly until suddenly it shot off and did sort of like a banking turn, and that would have been in this direction right over here. So he would have been looking this way, and he saw it suddenly move very fast and bank off to the northwest. Don't think that building would have been there at that time. He described it as over an open field. So the best explanation for this one seems to be, the most popular one seems to be, that it was some kind of blimp on kind of an unusual night flight. And it's kind of hard to believe that all of these different police officers would have mistaken a blimp, even in the middle of the night, for something else. Also the fact that more than one person said that suddenly it accelerated. We have talk of a banking turn, things that blimps don't do. And lastly, it also took a very kind of indirect route. It didn't go straight from Highland to Millstad. It took sort of a back and forth, different directions kind of route. So we may just have to accept that this is something we cannot explain, right? We don't have to debunk everything. And we may have to just say, we do not know what this was. If you think you know what it was, do feel free to comment below. That's always appreciated. And I hope you will join us for our next adventure, wherever that may be. Until then, I'll give you one more shot of the direction there where that UFO would have made its exit. Right over there.